Hello and welcome. I'm Sam Califer, your host for Vision, the show all about the College of Arts and Sciences. Today I'm joined by Dr. Christie Collins. She is a lecturer in the Department of English, and she recently published a new book. It's called Divergent Writers, Disability, Illness, Neurodivergence, and Ableism in Creative Writing. So I wanted to have her on to talk about that book and about her work in general. So Christie, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. I love having my English people, my creative writers on the show and getting to talk about your work. And so, yeah, I would love for you to just introduce yourself.
Right.
Tell me a bit about your background. What is the creative work or the academic work you do?
Right.
And then how did you come to do so here at Mississippi State?
I am a lecturer in English here at MSU. I mainly teach creative writing and introduction to lit. I actually got my master's here, so I've been affiliated with MSU for a long time. My field is primarily creative writing and poetry, though I also do a lot with Southern literature and particularly poetry of the South by women.
Sure.
And now I have fallen into disability studies as well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the overview.
That's awesome. I love hearing how people got started here at State, and then they often go off and do their great things, but come back home.
That's right.
Yeah, so happy to have you back here, and I know you're doing great things in the English department.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and congrats on your new book. That's super exciting, and that's really what I wanted to talk to you about. So yeah, tell me a bit about it. Like, what is the book about, and what was the inspiration for it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this book includes essays on creative writing and some form of disability by writers, 17 writers, I think, from across 5 countries. And it, what were your 2 questions again?
What is it about?
Yes.
And what was the inspiration?
Right, okay, absolutely. So the inspiration really came from really my own experience as a student within this field, the field of creative writing, and feeling like I never quite fit in. I was a good writer, but I wasn't achieving in the way that the field thought that writers should be achieving. In terms of speed and like quantity. It's really always more of a quantity issue than a quality issue.
Okay.
But then that's just what we always thought about writers, that if you're a writer, you just get at your typewriter or your laptop and you kind of pound something out overnight and it's brilliant. So I think that this idea of the writer has always been kind of head to head with an idea about speed and about being a certain kind of person. And so I just kind of put that to the back of my mind and was like, okay, I don't fit in these ways, but that's fine. And then I went to AWP and I was actually on a panel about neurodivergence and disability. And because of what was going on with me, with my brain fog from rheumatoid arthritis, I actually was late to my panel. And showed up to the panel without my materials. And so that would be a nightmare for most people, I guess. Being a lecturer for almost 20 years, you kind of have to be ready for almost anything.
Right.
So I just got up there, and instead of doing what I had planned, I just said, I've never said this before, but I'm neurodivergent. My mind doesn't work like other people. My body doesn't work like other people. And I'm tired of being judged. I'm tired of always feeling less than in this field. And I had such an amazing response from that.
Yeah.
So many people came up after and they were like, that's me too. I've always felt this way. You've like blown my mind. And I was like, I think there could be a book here.
Yeah.
Because at that time, this was 2023, there was no book in the field on any of this.
Yeah.
And so we needed to do something about that.
Yeah, no, I love that. So interesting that there is that personal connection there. I think that It's how a lot of great work happens. But what you're saying, even, it's like writing is the place that people go to when they feel like they don't fit in.
Exactly.
And then still even there is like cliques or, certain expectations.
Elitism.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And, that image of the writer, like the person who can get away and write for days on end, that is unrealistic and only favors one type of person.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think you're kind of, taking a lens to the field and showing there's different types of writers, and that's okay, and they have different perspectives, and it's important to have room for everyone.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, that's also, I think that's such important work, and I think people care about minorities and people who are marginalized, but
Right.
the disability is often the one that people don't think about.
Yeah, and I think it's the last one that people come to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people like otherness in general. And I think disability in particular makes people uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah. That is so interesting, and so I think, maybe in a way to be polite, they don't want to talk about it, but really the only way to address anything and fix it is to take it head on.
Right.
So I love that you're doing that. And okay, this is interesting to me because you said it's a collection of essays.
Right.
So there's a lot of other writers. So you are not the author, you're one of the editors.
I'm kind of an author-editor in this case.
Yeah, because you have an essay in
I
there.
do,
Sure.
yes.
So someone who's not in the publishing world, tell
Sure.
us what it means to be an editor for a book like this, and what
Right.
does the work look like?
Well, I can mainly speak to being an academic editor here, but for me, with this project, this was a project that I first pitched directly to Bloomsbury. This is who I wanted to put the book out. And luckily, I had like a 5-minute meeting, and I came in, this was online, with a PowerPoint, and I think I was the only one that showed up prepared for the meeting, so I think that already kind of made her like what I was going to say. But she really liked it, and she immediately wanted it.
Sure.
So that was the first role. I then recruited a co-editor, Saul Limerant, who had put out a book with Bloomsbury already and would know the ropes. And he was a colleague of mine when I was at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. So, and he's also neurodivergent as well. So we had a lot of overlaps there, and I thought we would be a good fit, and we were. From there, we put out a call for papers, so you kind of see who's out there that might want to write about this.
Sure.
From there, you choose which essays, you work with the individual writers to help their essay get to kind of the best place in order to fit within the work. Then you arrange and organize the work, and also all of the fun things like, copy editing some, but also citations, works cited stuff, footnotes. But at the very end, I wrote the introduction for the book as well, which was my kind of last thing to do.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's kind of a few different jobs. Like
Exactly.
You're a writer, obviously, and so you wrote that introduction, but kind of like a project manager.
Exactly, 100%.
You got a lot of people and a lot of moving parts, and then actually an editor too, like fixing someone's writing or taking a second eye to it and making it as strong as possible. So that's really cool. I think that's something that people don't know about. And it plays to a certain set of skills. Like you're probably a very organized person.
Have to be. Yeah.
So that's cool. And I just wanted, that's an interesting conversation. I think people who don't publish books wouldn't really get the difference between that. So yeah, I just want to talk about that for a minute. But now that the book is published, it's out there, maybe people are reading it, what would you hope they take away from the book?
I think you kind of already said it maybe, which is that writers aren't one kind of human. They don't work at one kind of pace. There was this adage that most of us have heard in workshop at some point, which is that writers write every day, or that they write weekly. They have a set schedule. And there's a lot of things like this. And if you don't fit into these kind of, bubbles, then you don't belong, you don't fit. And so I really wanted to say, some of these people really need accommodations, and they actually really need extra help. But I think it's also about just appreciating the difference within the field, which is ultimately what makes it so wonderful. Like you want as many different writers out there as possible, writing about outsiders, writing about conflicts. And you don't want to always hear from the people that have only ever had an easy time with it, you know? And so, so that's it. It's just to really kind of open everybody's eyes to how many different writers there are.
Yeah, that's so interesting too. And I think, a lot of times when we hear about accommodations, like you feel like as the normal person, perhaps you feel like you're going out of your way. But really, I think accommodation is for everybody.
Right.
Kind of what you're saying, it gives people a space so that you can hear their perspective.
Right.
And one day it might be you who needs the accommodation.
That's it. And I think that's true.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I think that's a better way to look at it. It's more of we all win, I think, when there's more accommodation, when there's more room for people. It's just so interesting. Such a great idea and approach, I think. To have something that, like a toolbox maybe, that they can buy and see those perspectives. And I like that it's different authors and they're talking about their own experiences. And so that's so interesting. And we have just a minute or two left. We've kind of been talking about this as well, but what would you say someone who doesn't deal with these kinds of things like neurodivergence, what is a misconception they might carry unknowingly about all that stuff?
Right. Well, I also wanted to add on from before, just really quick, that I feel like we're going to probably see accommodations before we see true acceptance. And so that's kind of a big thing here as well. But as far as the book, I really want anyone listening to know that currently 1 in 4 Americans is disabled.
Sure.
And so that's going to be a lot of people that that have some form of disability or neurodivergence, and also that disability impacts everyone, because if you're not disabled now, if you live long enough, you will be by the end of your life. So it's not just a certain type of person. It applies to all of us.
I love that. And something that I've kind of learned the older I've gotten, is that people do carry these things and you might never hear about it.
Exactly,
and
very true.
And it's kind of this silent epidemic. Like you should feel so lucky if you have a body that works and you feel like you're the normal person. And it's a literal insult to injury to not make room for, other people might have a different experience. So
that's it.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Really cool conversation. I hope people find this book and buy it and learn something. So thank you for joining me, and thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Vision. We'll see you next time.